We also are in Parliament. We also have a shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs, or International Relations, as it's now called. We have all those people, and I can assure you that if we were saying nothing on Ukraine, with our government being the international pariah on the subject, we would be fundamentally failing in our duty.
Actually, no, I'm going to disagree with that point fundamentally, because the international pariahs at this point, if you draw a map of the world and look at who has supported the votes against Russia, it's entirely the Western world. This is a white people's war, Helen. Absolutely, this is a white people's war. Consider the fact, India, the world's biggest democracy, Helen, the world's biggest democracy, has taken a neutral stance on this war. China, the world's second biggest country, has taken, it is not a war against the rule of law. It is a war against the fact that the US has consistently broken its word in terms of not expanding its borders right up to the doorstep. And I promise you, if my neighbor is going to turn around and plant machine guns that are pointed directly into my yard, I'm going to do something about it.
All right, now, so you have a
I haven't decided, but more crucially, the majority of the South, for want of a better word, is taking that view. Why is it that we now have the scenario that Brazil is now rallying around Russia? You've actually had, for the first time, this alliance between the Saudis and the Iranians now coming together. There is going to be a BRICS-based currency that is going to supplant the US dollar. The US dollar is on the verge of collapse because they have printed more US dollars in the Biden administration that ever existed in the course of history. Now, at the point at which the global financial system collapses, where the hell is your rules-based order going to be, Helen? You guys have your heads so firmly up your asses that you don't understand the seismic shift that's happening in the world right now in terms of this foreign policy. And I promise you that a year from now, you are going to look back on this war and you will see how fundamentally the world has been transformed, particularly in terms of the agreement that was signed between the Russians and the Chinese over the past couple of days. Read that with great detail, because right now, the bloc that we have in terms of Russia and India and China and Brazil is the world's biggest economy, not the US. And they are the single growth point for us from a trade point of view. And if we are not shifting our focus as a country to the West and getting our heads out of the asses of the United States, we are going to be totally ruined. So I'm very clear about that. If we're going to talk about force being the model, it's 20 years since the Iraq war. Let's talk about force there. Let's talk about force that was used in Libya. Let's talk about force that is used in Syria. Why does the DA never say anything about the fact that there are countries currently invading the DRC? We don't yet talk about that. Why do we not talk about the fact that the US has troops on the ground in Somalia? We don't hear the DA talking about that. So the DA is very selective. DA, yes, exactly. So why the selective targeting of what actually goes on in Ukraine when there is a pattern of this being happening?
Different things. But we can't go into, I mean, the troops are doing different things. We're in so-called peacekeeping forces across the continent because there are wars all over the place that have incredibly bad spin-offs for the continent and the people as a whole. But let's not go into all of this.